celebrate his life, but the most notable personalities will be the Ghetto Classics jazz band that will be performing this morning to celebrate the life of a man who celebrated the music of jazz, as well as encouraging the Safaricom Jazz Festival. What you can see here is many who have gathered here waiting to enter into the church just to get a space for them to be able to celebrate this particular Requiem service that will be celebrated here at the Anglican Church of Kenya. Olive, it is a somber mood. The music here is that of mourning and remembering a hero. But one thing that Wamboi actually urged Kenyans to do, those who would come here, is not necessarily to wear the color black, but to wear different colors to celebrate the color that was Bob Collymore. Remember the first times that Kenyans saw him in his eloquence was in 2010 when he joined Safaricom after Michael Joseph had left the helm at Kenya's biggest telecom company. So we are here with Jen Goeri, my colleague. If we can just chat with him. Jen, unamkumbuka vipi Bob Collymore?
Mwanzo kabisa asante sana Leila Mohamed, kama ulivyosema, hasa ibada ya misa ya leo ama ya wafu ni tofauti. Maanake tumezoea kuona kwamba ibada inafanyika kisha mazishi yanafuata. Lakini siku ya leo tunakumbuka kwamba Bob alifariki siku ya Jumatatu na akachomwa katika tanuri ya Kariakoo siku ya Jumanne, na siku ya leo ndo basi ibada ya wafu inafanyika. Na leo tunatarajia kwamba Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, ambaye alikuwa rafiki wa karibu sana wa Bob Collymore, ni miongoni mwa viongozi ambao wataweza kufika hapa kusherehekea maisha yake. Tunaelewa kwamba siku ya Jumatatu wiki iliyopita rais mwenyewe alimtembelea Bob nyumbani kwake na kuweza kuzungumza naye, na hapo Bob akamuelezea yale yanayopita na kusema kwamba mimi nimetafakari maisha yangu, nimeona nimeishi vizuri. Ndio kuna majuto, lakini nimeweza kurekebisha hapa na pale. Na kila mmoja ambaye alizungumza na marehemu Bob Collymore alisema kwamba Bob aliwaeleza kila mmoja wetu kuna mahali tumekosea, kuna mahali kuna majuto, lakini kama nilivyosema ni kwamba hata kama kuna majuto, je, maisha yako umeyaishi vipi? Je, umejiandaa wakati itakapofika kwamba ile ukurasa wa kitabu chako kinafungwa ama unafungwa, utakuwa tayari kwenda katika maisha ile nyingine? Alisema yeye hajui kama kuna binguni ama hakuna binguni, lakini anasema ametafakari haya yote, amefikiria maisha yake na ameona kama kweli ameishi maisha mazuri. Na kila mmoja ambaye alitangamana naye, na hata mimi mwenyewe siku ya Jumatatu sikuwahi kukutana naye Leila Bob Collymore, lakini nilikuwa na huzuni sana. Na hata watu wengi ambao ulizungumza nao walikuambia ni habari ambayo ilisikitisha, na si mtu ambaye umekutana naye, kuonyesha kwamba maisha yake aliweza kugusa maisha ya watu wengine kutokana na mambo alivyokuwa nafanya. Ulikuwa naona anatangamana na watu wa kada tofauti, kuanzia wafalme, kuanzia marais, hata mtu wa kawaida. Alikuwa anafika katika mtaa wa Dandora, Korogosho, anafika pale katika bus station, anazungumza na watu. Hivyo basi ni mambo tumeona, na watu wanasema ni mambo ya kujifunza, kuwa kwamba alikuwa na ile kwa mambo anaita humility, kwamba wewe ni mtu ambaye unaongoza kampuni kubwa zaidi, lakini bado unaweza kufika pale chini na kutangamana na hata wale ambao walizungumza katika kampuni ya Safaricom. Alisema kuanzia walinzi, hata yule mtu ambaye alikuwa anatengeneza chai alikuwa anasalimia wote. Hivyo basi ni mambo ambayo tumeweza kujifunza kwamba lazima uweze kunyenyekea, lazima uweze kuwa mtu ambaye unakuwa na utulivu na busara. Na uliona kwamba nilikuwa mtu mwenye ucheshi sana, na alikuwa tu mtu ambaye ni tofauti kabisa. Maanake watu wanasema kwamba amekuwa nchini kwa miaka 10 pekee, lakini angalia mambo ambayo ama sifa ambayo anamiminiwa. Unaweza fikiria amezaliwa hapa, lakini hakuzaliwa hapa. Alikuja hapa mwaka 2010, lakini ni miaka 10 pekee, lakini tumeweza kusikia ile impact yake hapa nchini.
Well, Olive, that is just Jen Goiri's remembrance of Bob Collymore. Many more are here, and we will be able to have a chance to speak to some of them if we can get that opportunity. But remember, how you begin life is not what counts, but how it ends is what is important in the books of religion or among society. This man was born in Guyana, the Caribbean islands, and he went all the way to live in the United Kingdom and landed here in Kenya, where he not only got himself a family, but also a wife and a wider friendship that he built among many celebrities and people from this country who will be here to celebrate his life. We are here, Olive, to cover this particular ceremony for you, and we'll be able to bring you live. We will be here with Jane Goiri. So back to you, Olive.
Thank you, Leila. As you heard and you've seen, we have a competent team on ground, and as the memorial service goes along and begins substantively, we will be bringing you live pictures. We will be broadcasting it live on NTV. Now, just to name a few of the other people who are expected, Jane Goiri did mention President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is expected to address those who will congregate at the All Saints Cathedral. Other than him, we'll have a student from the M-Pesa Foundation Academy who will give a tribute. We have Charles Musandu, who's a member of the Safaricom staff. Of course, Collymore having been in charge of 6,000 staff members at Safaricom. We have Nick Reed, who's the CEO of the Vodafone Group. We'll have Esther Mushemi, who's the chairlady of the Safaricom Dealers Association. We'll also have Joshua Chepkwony, who's a telecommunications community representative. Patrick Kwaku, a friend, and he is also the business community representative. We'll have Nick Haley, representing the diplomatic corps. Nicholas Nganga, who is the chairman of Safaricom. Peter Kenneth, who will be speaking on behalf of Bob Collymore's friends. Esther Koimet, who will be speaking as a government representative. And of course, Wamboi Collymore, whose tweet was read to us by Leila Mohammed. And the tweet, as Leila read it, reads, "I am overwhelmed by all the love and beautiful messages I have been receiving from you all here. It is a true testament to the character of the special man I was lucky to love. I can't respond to all your messages, but know that I have read and received your warmth. Thank you." And we can all only hope to live half the life that Bob Collymore has lived. And of course, in recognition of his love for the arts and for jazz, we'll have the Ghetto Classics, which will also be providing entertainment. And there will be a jazz processional at the start of the service. The cathedral doors have opened. Guests have been invited to take their seats. They are, of course, expected to take their seats by 10:30 a.m. On your screens, we have what I believe is the Ghetto Classics, and they will be honoring the late Robert Collymore through their music this morning. There will be limited parking at the Uhuru Park. The Safaricom shops will be closed between 10:30 a.m. and 2:30 in the afternoon in honor of Bob Collymore's legacy. Now we join Sharon Baranga, who is at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Sharon, what do we expect the Education CS to be responding to this morning? And could you tell us a bit about the task force he's addressing this morning?
Yes, Olive, excuse me. We had an early morning with Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha, who just launched a 26-member task force that is mandated to look into all matters that have to do with the competency-based curriculum. Right now, the task force is just inside the hall that is behind me, and they're having a closed-door meeting. The CS, of course, just left a few minutes ago. And what is expected of the task force for the next 1 year is to undertake a broad stakeholder engagement, review literature, and identify international best practices with a view of preparing a comprehensive report on transition of grade 6 cohort of CBC and standard 7 and 8 of 844 pupils in 2023, domiciling of grade 7, 8 and 9 within basic education structure, competency-based assessment for reformed curriculum, as well as advice on policy and legal issues necessary for effective implementation of curriculum reforms. Now, on the 16th of August, we are going to have a third national conference on curriculum reforms. Before then, they will be having about 4 or 5 pre-conferences that will be evident based on what the CBC has been able to achieve so far. Remember, this journey started in the year 2016. It has had a back and forth with some of the education stakeholders being against it, but the CS maintains his position that CBC will have to work back. The CS also challenged the task force to set themselves targets and that the ministry will support them. Teacher training is also top on the priority of the Ministry of Education. They are saying they are going to ensure that all teachers are well equipped to deliver CBC in the best way that they can. And one of the takeaway points from the task force, from the CS, say that CBC must succeed because it is the right thing to do. Back to you, Olive.
Thank you, Sharon. Welcome back. As I mentioned when we started NTV Today this morning, we are discussing coping with loss. And of course, it's timely on account of that we're celebrating the life and times of Robert Bob Collymore. With me in studio, we have Gladys Melo. Karibu sana. It is your first time here?
Yes.
What do you remember about Robert Collymore? What stuck with you?
Bob Collymore has done a lot in this country. I remember the Please Call Me. I remember the Mshwari. It is because of him. Yes.
All right. Sitting next to Gladys is Edwin Mainge, an entrepreneur. Edwin, you've experienced loss of your own.
So much. So much.
3 of your siblings.
Very, 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 very painful.
All right. So what words of encouragement would you have for Wambui Collymore and for the 4 children he's left behind?
Well, on my side, I would say having lost someone, it could be tricky for them to move on really quickly. Having that the man has been known by the whole country and everyone knows him and has been loved by people and is a man of change, and that was a man who was the father of the children and the man she loved. The only thing I will tell her is to accept that he's gone and the fact that he was ready to go, and try and give it a chance that she should have to move on. Just hold on. Though the memory can stay, but it will be hard to erase it. She can move on.
Okay.
Yes.
Lois, have you experienced any such loss of your own?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, quite a lot. I think the last one, I'm 3 years into finalizing and closing because of my brother. Yeah. So I'm still 3 years. Once in a while, it gets a little bit tricky for me. But one thing, like he has said, is very special about the loss of Bob. There was anticipated, you know what we anticipate that at some point in time, and it's declared because we hear of very few people who actually say goodbye. But even though that happens, like it has been said, you see the reality of the absence does not come until it happens. And then the issue to reorganize, readjust, and begin to fill in, begin to walk the life without that person is the task that they've got to walk. And it takes a while, and I think it's very important to basically say that it is usually given up to about 1 year to 2 years for someone to even begin to get at least comfortable with the loss of a very significant person. And then the first anniversary is very important. We usually do anniversary just like that, but the first anniversary is quite important because it's supposed to work towards a closure into the next level of life. Yeah.
All right, Edwin, how long has it been since you lost your siblings?
Well, from the year 2003, that's like close to 20 plus years right now. But, unlike...
How old were you?
I was around 7 by then. Yes, and unlike people who lose people and they see them and they bury them, for my brother I had to bury ashes because he burnt to ashes. Our house caught on fire. I had to wake up, go under the bed. He didn't wake up, so I left him on the bed. I was young by then. Caught under the mattress, and then the bed the mattress caught on fire and started melting on me. The way I got out, it's a story.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit about that? What happened?
Okay, so it was around April back in the year 2003, and we had come from school as usual, come back home, and normal usual things. Parents are always busy. The new parents of today, you always come home late, so we are there with the normal house help, do 1, 2, 3, after homework, we're bed, already gone to bed.
Where was home?
South B by then, shopping center. The place is still empty up to today to where we call Bam because the land has issues up to now.
Okay, are we talking a bungalow, maisonette?
No.
Flats?
It was not really a flat. We just built a small house. If I can recall very well, it was like a one-bedroom house. Yeah, because we were planning to rebuild a bigger one. So it was just a small house we had built in shopping center. By then, shopping center South B was not grown like now. Yeah.
Made of? Can you remember?
The house.
But you were 7 if you can't. It's perfectly fine.
It was made of unfinished, how do I put it? It was brick. Yes, brick.
Okay.
But not really fully done. And on top we had sheets.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just a small, simple housing.
So it was an ordinary day. You came home from school. Your parents weren't home yet.
Yes.
So what transpired from there?
Now, we went to bed after our house help did everything and after our homework. And I don't know, something just, I think it was the heat or something, but around 10 p.m., 11, I felt a lot of heat and I woke up, only to find the roof was on fire and everywhere there was fire, especially the door was still wooden, so it was completely on fire. So I couldn't run past it because we were in the bedroom. I woke up. The only thing I could look at is getting under the bed. And we used to sleep, the 3 of us, in one bed. And the other room was for our moms. Then the kitchen was just a small fixed thing, and then the bathroom was outside. Then a small place we had set up like a sitting room. So I went under the bed and I tried waking up my younger sister. She at least woke up. We went, the 2 of us, under the bed. Now, when the roof started engulfing down, my brother was on the bed. Already the mattress started burning up. So it started melting, and mind you, I was covering my sister like this because she was younger than me and smaller.
Oh, so those 3 of you?
Yeah, so there were the 3 of us. So I was covering my smaller sister like this. So the mattress, the moment it started melting, I was the first person. It started from my head. How I have my hair, I need to thank God. I don't know. My doctors used to say, I'm one child who should be dead. And they wonder how still I'm surviving. Okay. So it started with my head. So like the mattress melted from here, down back to the spine, and all to my hands. All these, as you can see, just from the from the pictures I sent you. So it melted and I couldn't sustain it. The pain I felt pain to a point, it was almost going away. Have you ever been beaten to a point you just want to die? If you've ever seen someone being beaten or being harassed or whatever happens, you'll be beaten to a point you just feel like, just kill me. Because the pain is too much. To a point you can't contain it, you can't protect yourself. That is what I felt. The way I look at fire, I normally used to look at fire as a very good servant. But since then, it taught me it was the worst master I've ever found. And
you
that's
can
the
still
reason.
recall the pain?
Yes. Yeah. It was the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. Because it reached a point I couldn't sustain it anymore. I ran, I don't know how I ran. I ran out of the house, leaving my sister there, and how I passed by the door, actually, it cut me somewhere here when I was passing over by the door to move outside where there was no fire.
Okay. And I hate to pause, but I want to press pause because we have an update from the All Saints Cathedral. We have Leila Mohammed. She is interviewing the outgoing Kenya Red Cross boss, and that is Abbas Gulay. Leila, what does he remember about Bob Collymore?
Well, Olive, one key thing that will be noticeable in the Nairobi CBD and probably across the country is that all Safaricom shops will remain closed in memory of their fallen CEO, Bob Collymore, from the hours of 10:30 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. when this requiem ceremony will be done and completed. Like I had said before, there will be many Kenyans from across the divide who will be here, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, among other leaders who have come to celebrate the life of the late Bob Collymore. But for now, we have Dr. Abbas Gulay, the Secretary General of the Kenya Red Cross Society. You were very prominent with him in 2011 when he championed the Kenyans for Kenya initiative. How do you remember those moments?
Well, those moments were one moment that any Kenyan would cherish for the rest of their lives. Bob was larger than life. Bob was a true humanitarian. Bob was a philanthropist. Bob was just Bob. And Bob was a nice person, a person that touched every Kenyan in many ways, especially the most vulnerable. For me, Kenyans for Kenya was one of the highlights of my careers, particularly in this country during emergencies. And Bob took the lead. He took the lead and he led from the front in a very humble way, where he was able to bring the private sector and the corporate sector, and particularly the media, Kenyan media, to the table to say, we have a problem, we must do something about it. He told me, I want to go to Turkana. We put him on a plane, went to Turkana, saw for himself what was happening, and there was no turning back. That's why the Kenyans for Kenya was set up. That's why he was the one chairing and championing that. He was a chair for its activities, for the distribution of the money, for the accountability of the money, until we implemented all that had to be implemented. Bob, for me, was just not Kenyans for Kenya. Bob was just hugely more than that. Westgate was on the forefront. Garissa University attack was on the forefront. Even now when he was not that well, even on Dusit and many other, all the droughts, all the floods, all the emergencies, all the fires in Nairobi and many parts of this country. I remember having a flight with Bob and going to, Kinango in Kwale, was an area that had been arid and semi-arid and people had no water and no food. On a chopper one morning, he came from India. I met him at the airport. We took a chopper and went to Kinango. Today is a different story. We have a project that people have now food self-sufficient in this little community, that they have water, because of a project that he undertook at the time. Largest funding by Safaricom M-Pesa Foundation with about 220 million Kenya shilling. So for me, Bob was not only a friend, to me he was a brother, he was an advisor. I was happy to have only met him on the 17th of June in his house with his dear wife Wambui, where I went to consult him for personal things of mine. That was Bob for me. He was just not a colleague, he was not a CEO, he was a friend and a true champion of Kenya for that matter.
So what are some of the notable quotes when you are just seated together, probably your brains are churning out ideas? What do you remember that made you laugh when you spoke with him?
Well, one of the funny things was I and him got bashed by the social media every time the disaster occurred and we fundraised. And the question was, one of my daughters at one point told me, why are you guys always taking the hit for this? Why do you always get the social media to attack you for doing the right thing? And when I said to this, Bob, he really laughed and he says, probably the young lady is right, but the question is, do we continue doing what we need to do, or we just give in to the manipulation of the social media? And of course he laughed off it. He said, come on, let's get on with our work and do our work and continue doing our work. So for me, he leaves a huge legacy. He leaves a lot of challenge for us. I think his dear wife and Wambui and her children and their children is what we really need to look after, pray for them, for their well-being and for their good health. But I think for the Safaricom fraternity, Safaricom as a company, even before Bob with Michael and the rest of the team have been a true supporter of the Red Cross and the humanitarian work for this country. So I really want to pass my condolences, one to the family, but also to the bigger Safaricom family, but also to ordinary Kenyans who loved and cherished and respected and understood who Bob was. Only having been 9 years in this country, having become a citizen of this country, but larger than life, that for me he was a true hero. And I can only pray to Lord Almighty to keep his soul in eternal peace until we meet again the hereafter.
Thank you very much indeed. We've been speaking to Red Cross Secretary General Dr. Abbas Gulait. We have many more Kenyans who are with us this morning. A very good morning to you, sir. There is a big smile on your face. What are you celebrating this morning?
I think we're celebrating the life of a great man, somebody who has set some very, very important standards for us in this country. Somebody who has shown that being good in business pays. Being an ethical businessman pays. Being an ethical company pays. And you can grow not by doing all sorts of strange things behind you, by just being steadfast in being a company of integrity.
When you're in silent prayer this morning, when the chaplain will be conducting the ceremony, what small prayer will you be asking the good Lord maybe to remember him or to forgive him for?
I think I'll be asking the good Lord to remember him for the lives that he touched. Not the big people, but the people that we tend to forget in society. And there's been several instances where I've been with him, where he's touched lives in a very, very different way. Ones that have actually taught me, myself, the essence of humility. So that's what I'm going to be praying for him.
We've seen in the last few hours of his life, his brothers, his friends, were his most stable support system. How important is it for you to put aside work, the heftiness of life in work, and just to celebrate the people who love you and care for you?
I think my area is that it all comes together. They're important to you, and the work also allows you to be with them as well. So integrate them, make them work for you, respect all of them, but most important, let the family, let the people around you be the basis for which you work. That is where you work for them.
Thank you, sir. Have a very good morning. Thank you for coming here. Let us allow you to go ahead as we speak to other people. Olive, we have more Kenyans who have come here. This particular face is not new to many Kenyans. This is a lady who's been on television for so many years. You have been very steadfast together with the late Bob Collymore. You sang with him in that particular song where you are doing the furi furi dance. How are you this morning, and why are we smiling this morning?
I'm smiling because he had a good life, and because he lived the life that he wanted to live. And, you know, we will cry, we will have our moments, but ultimately I think the best thing we can have is a chance to truly live. And I think he did that. Yeah, I think he gave back. I think he did good. So somewhere up there, when the scales are balanced, I'm sure he did more good than anything else. And so I'm happy for him.
At that time when you were going into this particular video, because it's what people now remember, these are the videos we keep seeing on television all the time, did you think, what are we doing? Are we doing... Is it okay? Because we've not seen people of such caliber, CEOs of companies, doing things that the ordinary Kenyan will be doing. Were you having second thoughts, or when he said, let's do this?
Okay. Do you mean the Furi Furi dance video?
The video.
So actually, Jimmy Gates approached us all individually. And so reached out, I think, to Bob, to Jeff, and I, and we all agreed separately. So we didn't have a conversation about it. And when we met there and did the dancing and the singing and the whole video, we had a ball. And I think that's what he was about. He wasn't about overthinking things. He was a strategic leader. But sometimes when things needed to move fast and he needed to make a decision, he wasn't shy to stand up and say, yeah, let's do that. And that's what I mean when I say truly live. Because sometimes as humans, we tend to procrastinate, think too much about things, push things aside that maybe we should have done and we should have experienced. You know, he walked in parts of Nairobi that I think some CEOs never experienced, you know, sat with people who some people would never think about sitting with, talking to, becoming good friends with. And that's a brilliant and a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julie Gishuru. Do enjoy yourself this particular morning.
I enjoy it. I think it's a tough one, but in honor of him, we carry a message, I think a message of positivity, and a message that if we can all stand up and do something good, if we can be bold and brave, maybe we take something from his life. Thank you
so much. One more, Olive. Good morning, sir.
Hi, how are you?
How are you this morning?
Very well. How are you doing?
How do you remember the late Bob Collymore?
I mean, amazing leader, intentful, passionate, honest, full of integrity, an amazing mentor, but most importantly, one of the greatest leaders we've had in Kenya, I believe.
Did you personally meet with him, or how do you remember him other than being the CEO of Safaricom company?
Yes, as a partner, I have personally met with him, I've worked with him. He's a great man, always present, always listening more than talking. But yeah, I did know of him, and we did work together as a partner. Yeah.
What message would you send to his family at this hour of mourning?
today is a celebration, so that's why we're in bright colors. It's a celebration of his life. Condolences to the family, but it's more importantly a celebration of his life.
Thank you very much, sir, and do have a good day. So, Olive, there are many, many more Kenyans who will be gathering here from 11 a.m. where the ceremony is expected to begin. President Uhuru Kenyatta will be among the many thousands of Kenyans who will be here at the All Saints Cathedral to celebrate this great legend who, as you have heard, was able to walk along the aisles of Nairobi city where many people of his caliber or his stature or class in life would not dare go. In his working years, his first job was at the shelves of the British Telecom. He also worked at Cellnet, Dixon's before joining Vodafone, and as well as coming here to Safaricom in 2010. So he's a man of many hats. He inspired many Kenyans of various walks of life. I have been able to read obituaries from normal Kenyans to international media houses where they speak nothing but praise of a man who has done more, according to them, for this country after leaving a legacy after Michael Joseph had left that particular company. Some of the notable projects that he did nurture was to increase the M-Pesa Foundation, to increase the usage of M-Pesa among the Kenyan and international users. There was the Safaricom Jazz Festival. M-Pesa also has an M-Pesa Foundation school where school children who are really bright and are not necessarily from privileged backgrounds go there to study. He was also very keen on the sporting entities, as Safaricom in various times has sponsored various teams before, during his tenure in the 9 years that he has been here in the country. As Abbas Gulet said, he loved this country so much that he became a citizen of Kenya, and his remains were interred at the Kariakor Hindu crematorium earlier this week. He had willed for that to happen. He had already urged his family that once he had passed on, these things would be as smooth, as easy as possible, and this would be the culmination of a life of 61 years lived from the Caribbean over Guyana all the way to here in Kenya. So we are still here, an entire broadcast team, myself and Jen Goiri. We will be here to get you the news, the views and the interviews and cover from top to bottom this Requiem Mass for you. For now, back to studio.
Thank you, Leila. Those pictures on your screen are of the interior of the All Saints Cathedral. Leila having gotten tributes from Abbas Gulet. We also heard from Julie Gishru and Patrick Obath, who remember Bob Collymore fondly. Now, for those who will be unable to access the All Saints Cathedral, there is a stream that will be broadcast from the Uhuru Park grounds. Yes, members of the public shall be able to view a live stream in Uhuru Park. Now let's listen in. I believe it's the time for entertainment. The guests should be seated by 10:30. We're listening there to the Safaricom Youth Orchestra, and Ghetto Classics will also be paying tribute to the late Bob Collymore. Now, Gladys, you've experienced some loss of your own.
Yes.
Expelled from school.
Yeah.
Went on and got married at a young age. You felt your father should have taken you back to school, so you also had that to deal with.
Yeah.
Should I call it a loss of opportunity?
Yes.
And what was that like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I imagine it is by falling that we rise. And you can imagine at that early stage.
How old were you?
A young girl. A Form 2 girl is 16. Oh, yeah, at that age. And it is a tender age. And being raised in a family where we had lost our mother, it was also difficult for me, because I right now believe and understand the myths of the society. By then, I see it like it had no place for a girl, and it was difficult for me, because being taken back to my rural home from high school, it was not an easy thing. In fact, I felt like I was in the blues. I was in the middle of nowhere. I had no one to turn to. I was alone. And I had to come back to my senses, even though you have to grieve. It is a kind of grieving that majority will not understand, especially that world of gender.
How old were you when you lost your mom?
I was in class 6. Yes.
Do you think that impacted how things, or affected how things
Yes.
eventually turned out?
Yes, yes, yes.
That loss haunted you?
Yes. That loss of my mother, I felt like I regretted. If mom was around, this could not have happened. Because being expelled from school, it means something happened. That it was my error. Being in a teenage or that early age, if maybe the guardian or the parents or maybe the society are not following up on such age, for sure you will enter into a ditch.
Okay, so you got married at what, 17?
Immediately I was expelled from school, I was married the same year.
And were you trying to fill a void?
I was trying to fill that void. I was trying to look for love. I was trying to justify my mistakes of being expelled from school. I felt that it was not me. I felt that this is not the life that I'm supposed to be. I felt that the world should break. I get into it, and I reflect back and see how I entered the marriage, and it was not me. It was not very pleasing. You see, you enter into a marriage, there was no courting, you know nothing about marriage, and you find yourself there. And that is what is happening today to most of the girls. And that's why I'm, in fact, advocating. I talk to girls so much about that period of life I was expelled. I talk to them. I always say I have no privacy in that period of time because it costed my education.
And that led you to found Trickle Up.
Yes.
And we'll come to that. So, I mean, Edwin, you went through such tremendous pain, and now you're an entrepreneur. Gladys, you've made it through. So now I want to hear from you guys how you've gotten to the point where you are at now. But Lois, she talks about getting married, getting into a marriage, not knowing this, fully understanding this person, fully understanding what marriage means, after the whole spell of having been expelled and her begging her father to go back to school and him not paying her any mind and, you know, leaving her in the rural home to go earn a living. Are there things that we do when we're in that grieving period? Because I lost my mom in 2016 and I look back and I feel like I was a zombie. There were things I was doing that I don't quite understand.
I think she's brought out very key issues on loss, especially at her age. The assumption that this should not affect a young child, the loss of a mother, should not affect that young child the way she was affected. So people get surprised that a person who is young could get to that kind of impacted loss. And then the kind of treatment that a young child is given is assumed that they are not adult, or they should not be able to feel that impact because this is a child. Okay? Then the moment this goes on to impact the character, and particularly she's mentioning a very key area, obedience to rules and structures is usually affected, and doing things that would really bring attention, because the cry is from inside but unconscious. that they are not able to follow rules, they are not able to, they have pain, but no one seems to listen. So they do things that would make people stop and maybe pay attention. But there comes now, for them, they paid attention by expelling her.
Yeah.
And then once she was expelled, the only person that matters most at that time is anybody who even attempts to show care. Then the person would give themselves in whatever way. Even if that person says we die together, she would say, let's do it. If it says let's maybe get and go drink and just forget about yourself, she would do it, because that's the only place that she finds meaning in life.
If I can tend to interfere with you a little bit. You see, unlike just losing, there is the case of trauma. Apart from trauma, there is the involvement of the community and how they receive you, especially rejection. I will tell you, after I got burnt and after everything happened, I stayed 1 year in hospital. After that, I went back to my schooling. I'm going to mention you guys, Kongoni Primary School in South Sea by then. And they couldn't withstand someone with bandages all over everywhere, because I used to use Mediven and some things I was supposed to use to apply on my skin. And nobody, not even the teachers, wanted me that close. I used to stay back there, and come on, we're in a world that people don't want anyone with marks. I'm sure I even have felt in building a Burnt Association of Kenya. I've been thinking a while, and I was like, I've met so many people with burn marks, but they can't go out. They fear people seeing them, even if it's uji or even if it's porridge or milk or whatever water that burnt you. These people don't want to show their marks. But the moment they saw me, I work with t-shirts sometimes, but when I was growing up, I couldn't do that. I had to wear clothes I can cover myself because I'm being called names. And funny enough, to the point I cleared high school, I was still being called Nyamachoma. You can imagine, everyone calls you Nyamachoma. There is the rejection at home. The community doesn't want to see someone with marks. My face was how it has changed.
All right, so you dealt with the same rejection more or less. A bit, I mean, similar. Your experiences are more or less similar, because you also dealt with that rejection after being expelled from school, and you know your family considered you a disappointment. So Lois, you were saying,
because it's important. It's important to realize that what she was doing was she was crying for help. But because the normal cry for help is not understood, then you find the character changes to the opposite. And it's bringing a very important point. Very few people, very few, are trained to deal with trauma. And particularly when any loss and any unfortunate circumstances somebody has found themselves in has left a significant change. Change of image, maybe change of status. Like if you lose property and now you don't have a house, it's difficult to find somebody to take you in, even if they're your brothers. Because the society, perhaps someone does not even understand what is the magnitude. If I start taking care of this young man who is burnt, how long will I do that? The mind is usually focused on how long will I do that? And then there is the whole issue of, he said something which I wouldn't want to miss. When the pain is so much that the body cannot take it, the brain can no longer sustain the pain, it numbs. And so when it numbs, somebody is able then to get out and just run or do whatever they can do because of the pain. And that happened to him. Now, when you are in that kind of a state, it's possible because you're the one who is feeling this heavy pain, and you're looking for people to offer care, which they are not able to offer. So it leaves the person who has this pain, who has gone through this loss, more angry, frustrated, and can actually do things that, again, the repercussion is, look, he's even burnt, but he's still not even polite. You get that kind of a situation. But it's because I am feeling like you're not paying attention to me. And it also brings out this whole issue around loss and the support system, is that people tend to take over the mourning and loss of somebody else, and they do it in their own style, imagining that this is the paces we go through. And it could be happening even right now, particularly with people who are of some high status. You find the company comes in and they do stuff the way they want to do it. And without referring back to this, to the core people, that what would you rather not want us to do? What colors would you prefer? Because maybe our Safaricom color is green, my color is purple, the company color is blue, but I would want yellow, I would want purple. So there are certain things that people just assume, but very critical to what they have said. There's that experience of like, I don't know how to deal with you, so I don't want to even go there. And particularly in school, we have children who still don't understand. They can only see the image, and they can only refer to it to the nearest image, nyama choma. And we also know that everyone around is working with their own trauma. And when they have not processed that, they have not dealt with it, they can easily hurt another person who is experiencing that kind of, or any kind of trauma.
Edwin, did that happen with you? Did you act up?
Are you asking a question or it's an answer? Olive, let me tell you the reality. It all started in 2004. The moment I went back to school, nobody could sustain me. So I had to move, I think I've done 4 different primary schools, because after moving that I had to go to places, and every school is like, no, madawa zenye unajipaka, they're smelling so much, and so many things. So I grew up a defense mechanism. So at first I started by fighting. I couldn't fight much because my aunts were not yet that strong by then. It was still so, they couldn't move like now. You know, I was still so crunchy. So I started small things like I would come to school, break the glasses, break the board or something. And yes, I was expelled in a number of schools. And finally, I saw, rather than hurting the school, why don't I just go ahead and hurting people? And rather than every community and the people surrounding me looking at me, even my psychiatrist, the one thing I hate with psychologists and these people is that rather than they make you overcome and beat it, in most cases you guys end up making us feel vulnerable. Like I was being told I should not go out, I should not, the things I was being told by that doctor by then, I was like, come on, like you should be helping me come out of this, but what you're doing is making me feel more vulnerable and more important. And yes, by the time I was in high school, I was beating everyone. You call me names, I became a bully, honestly. My principal, he's an attest to that in my high school. I became a bully and I couldn't even cope up with class because I come home, there is no peace because mom, you know, losing children too at the same time. The one that you have, nobody wants to see them, and you lose your job. And mom, I know you're watching, but you have been a great treasure to me. She went through a lot. And the fact that nobody wanted me in school, that was trauma number 1, and stress, both to her and to me.
Did you feel a responsibility for making your mother feel better? Being the only one of you, are the only child left, right? You're the only child left to her.
Yes.
Did that change the dynamic of your relationship? Did you feel a responsibility towards her? Did you feel like now I have to replace the 2 siblings that we lost by, you know?
By then, no, because there was too much going on. I don't want to mention what my mother went through, but I'm going to mention that whatever was happening everywhere in all the surrounding of the community was too much for me to bear. I couldn't sleep at home myself. So there was no way I had that feeling to go and talk to mom and like give her that comfort she needs. I wasn't able to do that. So what I returned back was to deal with me and help me grow. But I didn't. So the only thing I was like, I briefly entered into bad things. Seriously bad things. I was beating people. There was a time I even beat my principal very well. I went to train martial art. I felt like when knowing how to fight, nobody will beat you. And I started feeling better when I see war. So when you go for festivals in schools, in games, and in between inter-schools, or maybe we are going for sports or curriculum, wherever we have gone for. I remember there was a time we went to Mombasa for, let me confess this today, went to Mombasa for music festivals. That was in 2009. No, 2010, 11. We went to music festivals in Mombasa, and I stayed there all in between schools. And I sat there watching it, like almost 8 schools fighting together, you know. And to me, it felt like a fulfillment.
Yeah.
I was so happy.
Is that anger a stage of grief?
Yeah, because anger...
And what are the stages?
You know, you've gone through this pain that only you can understand. And no one seems to understand, and they're even mocking. You're being mocked about it, and it's none of your responsibility. So the only reasonable thing to do is hit back. And hit back in a way that would make you sit and really feel that, yes, they've got me, they've known me, even if it's not known, but I sit there and watch them struggle like I am struggling here. And it makes sense. He's also put in, you know, something about the mother, and at that point in time that this fire was burning these children, remember, the mother was not present. She was away. Now, that brings in issues of guilt, and it also brings in issues of shame that can kill. Because everybody tends to ask, where were you? What care did you take? What was going on? And then the person is left to blame and no one to listen and understand. And he's mentioned a model that was being used before that was very frustrating and very annoying. When somebody has gone through the trauma, you are almost made to, it's been proven ineffective, it has been discarded, absolutely. And if there's any counselor using that model out there at this point in time, please run away from them. There was an issue of relieving the trauma that someone went through. That has been discarded. It's no longer being done.
Okay.
Any professional counselor does not make a person relieve the trauma because it makes it worse. So you still remain vulnerable. But of course, we will always talk about safety issues on the advice and suggestion of a medical personnel that your client, this client that you're working with, needs not to do this, need not to do that, and that's part of a responsibility for any caregiver. So the son was extremely very difficult. The only challenge he had was, have you made sense for me about the limitations and the restrictions? Because the sun was not good for you at that particular time. That's because right. Your skin was extremely exposed. Yes. So if somebody makes it and breaks it down to that level and says, in case, because he's a child, if you want to go to the sun, maybe you do the sunscreen and you put on something that covers you. But whenever there is no sun, you're free to play because the air is good. So it's very important to break down small things to a person who is going through trauma. And that kind of support works well for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gladys.
Yes.
I've asked Edwin whether he acted up after his experiencing his tragedy. And your rebellious act was to get married. Yeah, you turned, as Lois spoke about, to the person who showed that they care. When did you let go of the anger?
I remember when the last day when the door was banged in the school, and my dad carried all the belongings and everything from school, and he took me back to our home, and he left me there and went back to Nairobi. It was like, no, I have to die. I was thinking of death at that particular time, and I imagined this family, there is nobody. My sister was married, our firstborn sister, and I was now the only girl in the family, and there is no mother in the family. It was like a deserted family. That is how our family looked like. And the society was very harsh on me. I remember even my sister usually told me, if you dare get pregnant, you will hold that baby with leaves. And I didn't even visualize where the baby will come from. I never thought of having a baby because I never knew how, you see. And I remembered my anger came through from the school, not from where I transitioned to marriage. I remembered I was vulnerable in the school. Why I got expelled, it was because of the peers. The peers. I lacked so many things in the school, and here I have friends from elite who are well up and they have like everything in the school, and they kept me. And one of the things I would confess here, because like my community, my even siblings and brothers, not even my husband, I know they might be watching me, nobody knew why I was expelled. It was because of drugs. I was used by this group of girls to keep for them. And they did crazy things in the school, including organizing those crimes and all that. And at the end of the day, I was expelled because everything was kept in my box. And my pain was, nobody knew why I was expelled. Not even my father. He was told, we are stories by the principal, and even including family planning, which I never knew by then. They were all taken from my box. And that was one of my pains. I never knew a man that particular time when I was expelled. And now here, the family plannings were here. And weed and other things.
All right.
So that is the anger that I carried into the other side of marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we come back, Lois, from this short break, Lois will tell us how to get over that anger and walk us through the other stages of grief. You're watching NTV Today, and we'll stay on the story of the memorial service of Robert Collymore is taking place at the All Saints Cathedral. We have Leila Mohammed and Jane Ngoiri on location. you for staying with NTV today. Our eyes are cast to the All Saints Cathedral, and on location we have Leila Mohammed and Jane Ngoiri, who just a few seconds ago spoke to the chairman of Safaricom, Nicholas Nganga. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
Ndoyo. Good morning, sir.
Maybe
Just a brief one.
maybe one question.
Yeah, one question.
One
is okay.
question.
Yes.
How do you remember him?
I remember him as a great man, as a person who created many opportunities, a person who grew our company, and to whom we owe a lot of gratitude. He was a pillar in the company, and that's the way we shall remember him. Okay?
Poleni sana.
A pillar, just one of the many adjectives that have been used to describe the late Bob Collymore. Death comes to us all, but great achievements build a momentum which shall endure until the sun grows cold. The words of American philosopher and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson ring true as we mourn Bob Collymore, the Safaricom chief executive who has left a legacy unlike any corporate Kenya boss before him. The reason why this loss is so heavy is that he touched so many hearts. Just last year, the International Finance Corporation lauded the firm's childcare program for working mothers that supports employees with children through on-site creches and additional paid maternity leave beyond the duration stipulated in the law. If there's a lesson here for corporate Kenya leaders, it is to actually walk the talk of supporting women's empowerment by starting right at their own companies. Mr. Collymore also played a major role in supporting the arts. Many journalists will also attest to the fact that he was the easiest CEO to interact with. He was direct with his answers, but perhaps Mr. Collymore's most enduring legacy will be that he made people feel seen, like they were worth something. He knew that he was at the helm of the most successful company in Kenya's history. And over to you, corporate Kenya bosses, what will your legacy be? Bob was on AM Live talking to Dibal and gave us a glimpse into his thoughts on leadership.
Bob, let me try also and reset my stopwatch here. You've got 10 minutes starting now.
You know, one of the great things about being on a panel with Mugo Kabati is that he actually is a very smart guy, and he's one of the best political leaders that Kenya has never had. And he says it all. You know, he says it in the way that I think many of us on the panel would like to say it. Much of the narrative around corruption has focused on the public sector, or indeed leaders of parastatals. Very little of the narrative is around us as individuals. We often point the finger at the pebbles. We point the finger at the policeman who takes a bribe at the roundabout. But we don't point the fingers at the people who give the bribe. And often you sit at dinners or drinks parties and people talk about how much they manage to escape, how little they manage to escape paying the policeman. For the public sector to get involved in corruption and bribery, it requires the private sector to fund it. And so I go much further, and I say that the source of corruption is the private sector, whether the private sector in an individual capacity or the private sector in a corporate capacity. I was having lunch with the Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, a little while ago, and he said to me that apparently in Kenya there's no word for corruption in the mother tongue, but there's a word for theft and for a thief. And in Kenya we know how to handle thieves, because if you steal a purse or a handbag, you will be lynched by the mob. Justice will be executed. However, if you're a corporate chief, if you're a chief executive or a finance director, and you steal 1 billion shillings, and we have no end of examples in the newspapers, you will get off scot-free. And as Mugo said, and Joshua says a lot, we admire corruption. We also aspire to corruption. So given an opportunity, we will all get involved in corruption because we point the finger at other people. We don't point the finger at ourselves. And this is why a little while ago, a group of companies came together under this heading of Business Against Corruption in Kenya, to sign up to a set of practices which says that not only will we sign the code of ethics, but we will also not work with people who don't sign that code of ethics. In Safaricom, we have actually asked our 350 vendors to each sign the code, and they have to do that by the 15th of March. And if the 16th of March you haven't signed, then you will no longer be a vendor to Safaricom. We've gone further than that, and we form a small coalition. So if you are blacklisted from KCB, you will also be blacklisted from Safaricom. If you're blacklisted from government procurement, you will also be blacklisted from Safaricom. But Mugo makes a very good point, that a lot of this is actually lip service. We sign the code of ethics, and we sign the code against corruption, but how many of us actually really live up to it? How many of us exercise consequence management? Safaricom is one of the companies that's very open about it, and often on social media, people say, Safaricom, you're thieves. And we say, yeah, we know that, and that's why we deal with it. And that's why whenever you look at our sustainability report, you'll see that we're exiting people at the rate of just over 1 a week. And I'm proud to be associated with companies like KCB, who are similarly dealing with this. And even the media often criticizes other people for corruption. But I challenge any media company, we're here at Nation Media Group today, I challenge any media company to tell me that their own accounts department is not involved in corruption. Their own editorial staff is not involved in corruption. Their own advertising department is not involved in corruption. So my plea really is that we start to look inwards. We start to look at our own behavior. We start to look at our own propensity to pay that 500 shilling bribe to the policeman. The day we all are prepared to go to jail, we are prepared to actually have an overnight in jail for not paying a bribe, is the day we will really start to address this corrosive thing called corruption or theft. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. You left it midway. Thank you.
I think with all these stories...
Bob Collymore there speaking when he made a presentation on AM Live. I'm sorry, the conversation in studio is just so amazing, so much to talk about. But let's briefly cross over to the All Saints Cathedral so Leila can bring us up to speed on what's transpiring there. Leila, the guests should be seated in the next 15 minutes. Is it almost at capacity?
Well, Jen, before we talk about who has come in, let me just read for you something. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see the bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, this song, Olive, was written by Louis Armstrong way in the 60s, a song that is a beautiful jazz and pop jazz song that has just sung here, just outside where relatives, friends have gathered to celebrate this spectacular gentleman. Another thing, Olive, that people should see is this particular picture on his eulogy book. As you can see, he is in heaven. There is a Safaricom desk here, and they are saying he's cloud hosting services now, and an angel is there looking. And if I can read the quote, it's Bob, in God's hands you rest, and in our hearts you will live forever until we meet again. This is how Safaricom is choosing to remember their leader. We've been here all morning, myself and Jen Goiri. Maybe if you can just invite her to set a beat to talk more about what is happening here in the morning. As you can see, Sylvia Mulinge from Safaricom just walking in and talking to us. Jeff, hello. Good morning. How are you? Pole sana.
Tough day. But you know what? We're going to give him a proper send-off because he deserves it. He was a great guy. We loved him. Everybody loves him who loved him. And this is the best way to see him off. And we pray for the family. We pray that they stay strong. And let's make this a celebration. We're not mourning today. It's a celebration of the life of a great man.
In the industry, I know you play for the other team, but yesterday everyone was tuned in to listen to the boys and talk about their lives and how they spent it with the late Bob. How important is it for that support system, that base, for someone just to be whole?
It's very important. It's crucial. It's crucial because you need that support base. You can't survive without it. And with Bob, he had a few close friends who were very, very loyal, and we were friends because we were friends, not for anything, not for any ulterior motive. We were friends just for the sake of it, and that's the kind of guy he was. He attracted those kind of people.
Will we be seeing any tears, any speeches today from you?
Stay tuned.
That's one of his good friends who's also... Well, we also have a senator who has also been a champion of cancer in the country. A very good morning to you. When you see people mourning cancer this way, what does it mean to you as a champion for this disease?
To me, what it means, first of all, I am very proud of Bob, the way he held up to the end. And he did not show fear. He showed great braveness in fight against cancer. And that's what we should do. During mourning, Kwanzaa, first of all, I give my condolences, deep condolences to their family, but then to encourage them that Bob has done so much. Even if he has left, us, his life, his memory goes on because of the work he did to the country, to the lowest level of our citizens. He cared, and that is a big contribution. So for the family, I want to tell them to take heart, and I visited them at home. I saw one boy has been very strong, and the mother and the sister. I want to tell them to be strong because they will see Bob. And Bob, at the end, we all are going to go one day or another. But Bob lived a full life, and Bob served humanity. So they should not mourn. And one boy said we shouldn't even wear black because we are celebrating Bob's life.
Thank you very much. That was Beth Mugo, a special senator who is also a cancer survivor herself. Let's talk to another gentleman. A very good morning to you, and how do you remember the late Bob Collymore?
Good morning. Bob Collymore is a man who transformed the lives of Kenyans. He's a gentleman who came to Kenya 9 years ago, and look at the number of Kenyans who have come to bury this man. He was a good friend, he was a gentleman, and we've learned a lot from how to run an enterprise, an institution, and a business. And we pray to Allah to rest his soul in eternal peace.
What would you take one thing from how he lived his life that will change how you live your life?
Humility. Simple humility. He is a man who had more than all of us, but he lived it simpler than most of us. That's what I would like to aim for myself, for my family, and my children.
Thank you very much. Let's talk to another gentleman. A very good morning to you, sir. Please come here on the set. How are your emotions this morning going into the remembrance of the late Bob Collymore?
I think Bob Collymore, for us from the corporate sector, he really led by example. He led us and he showed us what to do in the corporate world. The way he steered Safaricom, where it's not just the issue of profits. Yes, profits are important, yes, but also touching other people's lives. The ecosystem within Safaricom, I think that was a very good example that he showed the rest of us in the corporate life, yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. A very good morning to you. Asante kwa kujiunga nasi. We are also joined by Canon. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
As a man of the cloth, how would you give courage and encouragement to the family that is mourning this morning?
Just to assure them of our prayers and encouragement at this time of loss, and to appreciate the way Bob fought his illness and remained productive right up to the last day.
I am amazed by his humility, his devotion, his commitment, and his leadership. These are virtues that will be an inspiration to many Kenyans in days to come. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, and have a good day ahead. Olive, we are still here. Mourners are continuing to gather here. We are expecting President Uhuru Kenyatta to arrive any time. They were expected to sit down early this morning. A very good morning, Bwana Ambassador. How are you this morning?
Very well, ma'am. Nice to see you.
How do you remember Bob?
As a man who made a really big difference. One of the things I do in my work is I travel around Kenya, and everywhere I go I see the echoes, the impact of what Bob Collymore did. Of course I remember him as a friend, as a man who was also British, who did a lot to strengthen the connections between our countries, but I think the real thing is the impact here in Kenya, and I think there's almost nobody in this country whose life is not touched in some way.
If there's a man who did diplomacy without actually knowing it, it could be him, coming from Guyana, living in London, and having worked at the very top of British Telecom and coming here to Kenya. How would you see how he lived his life in terms of selling where he came from and nurturing the people that he touched?
Well, diplomacy is about connections, and I've never met anyone better at making connections than Bob. Of course, his business was about connecting people. But he didn't just think about that as a transaction. He thought about that as a relationship, as a way that people could come together and could be something better. And he inspired so many people with those connections. And I think that's how we'll remember him.
Did the British people feel bad when he became a Kenyan citizen?
Well, I think he stayed a British citizen too. We used to talk about the UK. He felt connected to many places, of course, and he had an impact on the world through the United Nations, through the work that he did against corruption internationally. So I think everyone will remember him very fondly. Everyone has a claim, if you like, on some connection, but because he brought us together.
Let me allow you to walk in. Thank you very much, Ambassador Nick Haley, the High Commissioner of the United Kingdom to Kenya. He is also here with us. We are also speaking to the former Attorney General. Please bear with us. Sorry for ambushing you, but good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today, and what are your feelings going into this ceremony?
It's a great loss for this country. Bob dedicated himself to making this a better country. He made many, many wonderful friends here. It's a big loss.
Thank you so much. Well, Olive, the song by What a Wonderful World is still ringing in my ears, even as I introduce Jen Goiri, who's been my super producer this particular morning in the cold, inaitwa Freeze and Shine.
Freeze and Shine. Lakini Leila, jambo la muhimu naloona leo ni kwamba kila mtu amewacha kazi yake, ameacha ile ambayo anafanya kuja hapa kumuenzi Bob Collymore. Kuna watu ambao tumeona kama alikuwa makamu wa rais Mudi Awori, umemwona seneta wa Baringo Gideon Moi, unamwona alikuwa mkuu wa sheria Githu Mugai, mabalozi, wageni na hata wafanyakazi wa Safaricom katika bustani ya Uhuru Park. Tunaambiwa kwamba wananchi wamefika hapo, wamefurika. Kila mmoja amewacha kazi yake kuja kusherekea kama wanavyosema maisha ya marehemu Bob Collymore. Mkewe tayari amewasili hapa, na kama ulivyotangulia kusema hapo awali, alisema kwamba siku ya leo, na kama ulivyoona wengi ambao wamezungumza nasi, hakuna mwenye amevalia nguo nyeusi. Wanasema kwamba tuvalie nguo za rangi tofauti. Hatumuombolezi bali tunamsherekea, na kama tulivyosema pia hapo awali ni kama maduka yote ya Safaricom kuanzia mwendo saa 4:30 hadi saa 8:30 yamefungwa ili kumpa heshima, na kama unavyoona hii ndio itakuwa ni safari yake ya mwisho ya watu kusherekea maisha yake. Maana alifariki siku ya Jumatatu na akaweza kuchomwa katika tanuri ya Kariakoo siku ya Jumanne, na siku ya leo inakuwa ni ile ibada ya wafu kumsherekea. Na kama nilivyoingia hapa nasikia ule muziki wa jazz. Na utakumbuka Bob Collymore alikuwa anapenda muziki huo sana, na hivyo basi aliweza kuchukua kundi la Ghetto Classics kutoka Korogosho na kuwakuza. Na kundi hilo nilipata fursa ya kuweza kuwahoji katika Johari wakati nilikuwa nafanya Johari Ijumaa. Na walisema kwamba kama si Bob hatungefika hapa. Manake wameweza kufika katika mataifa mbalimbali kuweza kuonyesha mambo ambayo wanaweza kucheza muziki aina ya jazz. Bob pia mwenyewe alianzisha Safaricom Jazz Festival. Nakumbuka ni tamasha ambalo kunakuwa na wasanii wanaocheza muziki huo wa jazz, wanafika kutoka maeneo mbalimbali duniani ili kuweza kuonyesha umahiri wao katika mchezo ama muziki ule wa jazz, na ni muziki ambao unatuliza sana. Na naambiwa kwamba alikuwa anacheza ule ala unafahamika kama saxophone vizuri sana. Kando na hayo pia alikuwa rubani. Na inasemekana hakuenda katika taasisi yoyote ile, lakini na kama mpiga picha wangu ataweza kuona yule pale ambaye anawasili sasa ni kiongozi wa ANC Musalia Mudavadi. Tunatumai kwamba tutapata fursa ya kuzungumza nasi, atupe hisia zake, anamkumbuka vipi Bob Collymore, na je, ni nini tunaweza kujifunza kutoka kwake Bob Collymore.
Wake vizuri na amejenga Safaricom kuwa kampuni ambayo inaheshimika baada ya ndugu yake Michael Joseph. Na mimi nakumbuka tu kwamba haikuwa kazi rahisi, kwa sababu mwanzoni mnakumbuka Kenya ilikuwa control na monopoly ile ya telecom. Na wakati huo mambo ya liberalization ilikuwa ikija. Na mimi nakumbuka sana nikiwa waziri wa fedha, ilikuwa vigumu kuhakikisha kwamba wenzangu kwa serikali wanakubali ili sasa privatization iingie kwa communication. Nakumbuka simu ya kwanza ile mzito, ile kubwa, ilikuwa na uzo kwa shilingi 250,000. Na ulikuwa naipata tu kutoka kwa Telecom, na tena managing director wa Telecom wakati huo aidhinishe. Kwa hivyo wakati sasa policy ya kufungua airwaves ilipoingia na Vodafone wakaja, wakashirikiana na kuunda, wakapata leseni ya kwanza ya kucompete na Telecom. Kuna historia hapo. Na nimekuwa nikitazama, sikuona sana mkiandika hiyo historia. Pahali tulitoka tukiwa na only one communication center ya Telecom. Na sasa tumevuka mpaka sasa kuna mashirika mengi ambayo yanafanya hivyo. Na Safaricom ndio kubwa zaidi. Kuna historia hapo. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwatuma kidogo muende muangalie how we liberalize the country, na vile sasa Bob na mwenzake vile walishikilia kabisa na kufanya hiyo kampuni kuwa sawa.
Na sasa wakati huu ukiwa serikalini, uliwahi kufikiri kana kwamba kwa muda wa miaka 20 hivi mambo yatakuwa yamebadilika jinsi yalivyo sasa?
Mimi nasema tu sikuwa nafikiri labda itabadilika hivi, lakini ni jambo la ajabu, sivyo? Wamefanya kazi nzuri. Kwa hivyo Bob Collymore ameweka footprint yake kwa historia ya Kenya na historia ya corporate world.
Wa Kenya tunaweza, kuna uwezekano Mkenya aendeshe kampuni jinsi Bob Collymore ameendesha Safaricom?
Ndugu, wanaweza. Bob alikuwa juu kabisa kama head of the organization, lakini ukweli wa mambo si wengi wafanyikazi kule ni wa Kenya. Kwa hivyo wa Kenya wanaweza.
Asante sana.
Na basi mtazamaji, huyo alikuwa ni kiongozi wa ANC ambaye ni Musalia Mudavadi akitoa hisia zake kuhusu kifo cha Bob Collymore. Na Leila, kama ulivyomsikia, anasema kwamba mkurugenzi huyo ameweza kubadilisha mambo yalivyokuwa hapa katika nchini. Sasa tuzungumza na katibu Esther Koimet.
What can you say about Bob Collymore? Did you have probably any close relationship with him?
Yeah, I've known Bob for a long time because before he became CEO of Safaricom, he was on the board of Safaricom. So I've known him for a long time. He was a great person, a special person, a people's person, a wonderful person to work with.
Any fond memories you remember of him? Something very specific you remember about him?
Bob always solved problems, but on the social side, he also taught us how to have fun while working. So, jazz, Safaricom marathon, and his happy socks. He always had these nice, flowery, nice socks. Yeah.
Of course, there have been talks that a Kenyan should take over. Do you think that we are ready to take over Safaricom if that happens?
We have great Kenyan leaders. Kenyans run economies, not just ours, but in our region and beyond. So, yes.
But the same Kenyans, we hear a lot of corruption about them. I mean, every time you hear about a Kenyan when corruption, it's like Siamese twins.
That's the view of, people. People have different views about things, but it doesn't mean that we don't have leaders who can actually lead this company or other corporates in this country or indeed beyond.
Thank you so much.
Na tunaendelea na matangazo yetu. Leila Mohamed huyu alikuwa ni katibu katika Wizara ya Biashara, ama ni utasema hivyo, na anasema kwamba Bob alimfunza jambo moja, kwamba unaweza kufanya kazi lakini iwe ni kazi kama ina furaha. Ile unaenjoy what you do, kama sisi tunavyofanya hapa. We enjoy what you do, yes. Unafanya kwa raha, na ndiposa kazi yako sasa inaweza kusimama. Wageni bado wanazidi kuingia. Huyo ni gavana wa Uasin Gishu Jackson Mandago ambaye anaingia kwa sasa, na kama nilivyotangulia kusema hapo awali, Leila Mohamed, unaona ni kana kwamba sio kama nchi imesimama, ama tutasema vipi, tusiseme nchi imesimama, lakini watu kutoka maeneo mbalimbali wameacha shughuli zao na kufika hapa ili kuweza kumwenzi Bob Collymore.
It's true, Jane, because I can see everyone from all walks of life, as you said before, is here. But true to your word, two things that will come out of remembrance of Bob Collymore at Safaricom is for specifically new mothers, they would get 4 months for their maternity leave. And when they resume their duties, they would go back to work with their babies, have them at their workplace, be able to nurse them and take care of them for 6 months down the line. That is something that many mothers in that organization are very happy about. And also another thing that I read is that he was keen to tell people that once you reach your home, you need to shut off and just relax. And as you can see, the entire country has come here, and the media is in a frenzy to try and get to speak to all these great people. So let's see if our camera can get there.
Kwa hivyo sisi tunamkumbuka Bob Collymore kwa yale mambo ambayo amefanya. Tulikuwa tunashirikiana naye vizuri kule Machakos, wanajenga mall kubwa pale at the river inaitwa Crystal, na tumefanya kazi pamoja naye. Kuna viwanda tofauti za Safaricom kule Machakos pia, lakini jambo la muhimu kwamba yeye alijitokeza kuhudumia wananchi, si kuongea tu kuhusu wananchi. Na alikuwa pia hataki mambo ya siasa duni. Wakati walikuwa watu wanasema kwamba barabara Mutua hajajenga vizuri, yeye alijiingiza kwa gari yake akakuja Machakos, akatembea zile barabara za lami tukajenga, na hata akatoa tweet akasema, nyinyi mnaongea nini? Njooni Machakos muone maendeleo yalivyo. Kwa hivyo alikuwa ni mtu wa ukweli, mtu ambaye alikuwa anasema tushirikiane pamoja tuweze kujenga nchi yetu pamoja.
Kwa hivyo viongozi wajifunze yepi, hasa viongozi wa kisiasa na pia biashara katika kuongoza sekta zao?
Nafikiri jambo la muhimu ambalo linalo kwamba yeye alipendwa na watu kwa sababu yeye alifanya kazi, hata ikiwa hakuhitimu kwenda chuo kikuu, lakini ni ile kazi ambayo alikuwa anaifanya ambayo ilimfanya aweze kusimama na kuonekana akiwa mtu ambaye anajua kazi. Kwa hivyo naomba wa Kenya tufanye kazi. Tuache siasa za kuzurura, kuitisha viti saa zote. Tungojee tufanye kazi ionekane, alafu kazi iweze kutuuza. Jambo lingine ni kwamba unajua jambo ambalo linasikitisha ni kwamba viongozi wote wa kampuni kubwa kama Safaricom wanatoka nje. Kwa nini? Kwa sababu tunaona ni watu ambao wana nidhamu, watafanya kazi, hawana ukabila, hawana mapendeleo, hawana ndugu ama dada yao wataandika kwa kazi, wanafanya kazi ambayo itawezesha kuendelea na mbele. Kwa hivyo ni jambo muhimu ambalo wana nidhamu. Unajua wengine wetu, unajua zile hali yetu ya maisha, unaingia pale una nidhamu, kuna ndugu yako, una dada yako, ukabila unaingia pale, ukiondolewa kwa sababu hujafanya kazi wanasema our man is being finished. Tunataka professionals, unakuwa unaangaliwa kwa ile kazi ambayo unaifanya, sio kabila lako, sio mahali ambapo umetoka. Kwa hivyo mimi ni mtu ambaye tulikuwa tunafahamiana kikazi, tunaongea, na ni jambo ambalo limetushtua sana. Niliongea naye alipokuwa Uingereza wakati alikuwa anatibiwa, akaniambia yuko karibu kupona, anarudi Kenya. Alikuja Kenya, tuliongea mara kadhaa, akaniambia yuko sawa. Kwa hivyo mimi nilishtuka sana kujua kwamba wiki mbili tu hivi baada si kuongea mambo yalienda mrama na ametuacha. Lakini jambo la mwisho ni kwamba lazima
Well, Olive, many more people are walking into the All Saints Cathedral, the main Anglican church in the country. We have the CS for Sports, Amina Mohammed, who, if we can just ask, Assalamu alaikum, good morning. How are you feeling this morning?
Well, I think we're all quite sad this morning. Yeah, we're all saddened by his death. And we have many lessons, very, very many lessons. He was humane, he was kind, he was generous, hardworking, resilient, very diligent. So a lot of lessons learned from him. Yeah.
What can Kenyans speak from his character, Bob, how he lived his life?
Everything, yeah. Very organized, right? He had a very organized life. It was well planned. It was, he gave everything that he had to his work, of course to his family, and to our country. And I think as Kenyans we should always be grateful that he lived amongst us, and for 10 years that he worked for us. Yeah, and so we'll always thank God for that. Thank you so much.
Well, it is 10:30 in the morning, Olive. Anytime soon the head of state will be arriving here, and the ceremony will begin. If I can just take you through the program of events, by 10:30 everyone is supposed to be seated. At 11 the service starts, and there will be a jazz processional, and the song will be Smile by Nat King Cole. Then there will be a prayer, and people will speak. There will be various tributes. The Adagio for strings by Samuel Baba will be there. There will be readings at around 12:40. There will be a video of the late Bob Collymore, and a sermon by the Provost, the Right Reverend Canon Sami Wainaina, and then the offertory for the church. The Safaricom Choir will also perform the prayer for the family. The President, the head of state, is expected to give his speech around 1 p.m. Then final prayers, as well as other issues. So many more people are coming here, Olive. We might not be able to capture the voices of all of them, but we acknowledge that he was a man who was loved by many, and many have come out in their numbers. They are continuing to stream in. By 9:30 they were expected to sit, but it seems many more will continue to come here just to celebrate this day. We'll be giving you pictures from the All Saints Cathedral, but for now I take you back to Olive to continue with discussions in studio.
I have to say, Leila Mohammed and Jane Ngori are doing a commendable job at the All Saints Cathedral. We've heard from several people, including Musalia Mudavadi, Alfred Mutua, and last but definitely not least, the sports CS Amina Mohammed. And we're talking about dealing with grief. And Lois, you were telling me how your experience growing up was similar to what Gladys went through.
Yes.
So let's transition now into how you cope with grief.
I think one of the things that anyone who is going through any loss of any kind is to acknowledge and accept that they are going to be frustrated, angry, confused, and disorganized, and have mixed feelings running through. And at that point in time, it's important for everyone to ensure, sometimes I use demand people to understand you. Demand, because at that point in time, if you are in a position where you're going through your losses, do what you would feel like doing at that point in time, except maybe harming yourself. Because sometimes you want to scream, you want to just raise your hand, blow a fist. Sometimes you just want to be quiet, but people tend to want to choreograph how you respond. Be strong, just take it in, those kind of things. Then after that, acknowledging that you will not, it will take time before you deal with all these things, and then looking for support. And looking for good support. Even as we're saying this, remember, he was too young to look for good support. The mother was not in a position to. So we're even speaking to people who are next or who are interacting with those who are going through loss, that please find a way of listening to them and find a way of what will work for them at that point in time. And because a lot of people come around to support, including even well-wishers, but they give what they always do without knowing what this person needs. But one of the things that has to do is, like what he did, was getting into a safe place and finding safety in whatever form. Even if it is safety in a place that is unusual, remember, she found safety somewhere else rather than safety in death. Remember, she actually talked about find some safety that is not harmful. He's talking about even at one point in time going into the streets, And somehow in the streets, he was able to come out. Now, the two of them, and that includes also me, finding a passion, a survivor's mission, is what brings the entire healing. So until someone finds a mission that they do to make them see that they are really playing a part so that somebody does not go through what they went through, I resonate so well with Gladys, Gladys.
Yeah.
Because in high school, I was a teacher for over 17 years, and I stepped out because of the anger of seeing how students were handled in school. And some of them getting into trouble because of someone not just listening and allowing them to say the truth. I was once expelled. I've been suspended. But I was not the person who did what I was being accused to do, but someone just assumed. We've seen students being labeled because they have red eyes.
Yeah.
I have handled a student who changed his religion because he was praying for a friend, but he felt his faith does not pray enough times. So he went to the faith that demands him to pray 7 times. So can we have a moment of listening? Because everything makes sense. And if there's anything that I would want to leave with any viewer today, everything makes sense if people trust you with the truth.
Okay. I can see Jane Goiri and Leila Mohammed have engaged Chris Kirubi.
Much better, but sad. Yeah? Because the last time I was with Bob, he came to see me in my house. I was more sick than him. And now to find that we are losing him and this is the kind of event we are having, is a very sad occasion. But we must not forget Bob's principles, what he did to develop a company that was second to none. Okay?
Thank you.
We can see you later on.
I'm in trouble. Thank you.
Dr. Chris Kirubi speaking there to NTV and the other media houses, and he of course has made reference to his own experience battling cancer, and we do wish him a full and a quick recovery. Lois, you are talking to us about finding a survivor's mission.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about having a similar experience to Gladys's. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that helps, that aids in achieving or attaining a sense of healing.
Yes, because that is actually the pinnacle of the healing. Where now you find yourself, a survivor finds himself doing things to prevent anyone from going through what they went through. And that is so that's so fulfilling. I'm almost certain that Bob was doing perhaps even a survivor's mission of reaching out, because you hardly find people who are not having some experience that they want to prevent others from going through, getting to that humble levels, getting to understand people that much, sitting with people and knowing that there are certain things that very many people don't understand. So it's quite important to find that survivor's mission. And of course, knowing that it takes quite some time to even go through. And by the way, there's nothing like forgetting. Right now, if we put ourselves through, all of us, we can remember the saddest moments in details.
In details.
In details. If we put ourselves through. Yes. But then, what is also very, very comforting is that once you come to a point of making humor out of some of those missions, like when you're watching, like drama and video, because you've caused a star and people are fighting, then finding humor into it and ensuring that sometimes you can laugh about yourself at some of the things that you were doing.
Okay. How do you handle somebody who's experienced this sort of loss? Because a lot of people, Wambui Collymore will come to, will approach Wambui Collymore today and extend their condolences and perhaps words of encouragement. How do you handle somebody who's grieving? What do you tell them?
I think one of the saddest things that happens to people who are coming to comfort others is to usually want to find words to tell them. So what if you just come and tell them, I'm just here, but I'm not even able to know what to say, but I'm just here with you. What we usually try to look for words, and most of the words we say are inappropriate. Because those inappropriate words are the words that actually make this person close. Because if everyone is saying, I can see you're strong, I don't want to contradict them. I can see you putting up well with this. Oh, we thank God for you. You're such a good Christian. You know? So people cringe and they don't want to tell you, man, I am tearing inside. I feel like just rolling myself on the ground. But what if there should be some closest friends that should allow this person to be and to just experience the anger, the emotions, the questioning, you know, the frustration, so that they can deal with it. There is no shortcut to relieving the pain of loss until you do it the way you feel like.
Okay, Edwin, at what point did you go from a troublemaker into the survivor's mission?
Okay, well, Olive, just like Lois is saying, the body reaches a point, and specifically the mind, depending on the things you look at, or whoever you choose to look at, that is, if you don't get the right people in your life. I reached a point in my life and I had to make a decision. I reached a point and I was like, this is gonna lead me to jail. This is gonna lead me somewhere. It was brought about after I cleared high school, around 2013, because I cleared 2012. Somewhere along the line, I've reached a point I said, I'm not gonna continue doing things because I was almost ending to crime. And just every human being, with yourself and everyone, they want to be liked, loved, and accepted by the community. And crime is a way of showing people have undergone rejection. Same case with these guys who live flamboyant life and want to show the caste they have and everything. That those are people who have gone through rejection and they want to show the people, I have this, I have that, I have this. So I reached a point I said, no, how about I become change to someone? Because I went to a school unplanned, invited by somebody, come take me to an institution. And he gave a speech, and he reached a point, he said, give them your story. I didn't know my story would help someone. So I told them how I got bad, and they saw everyone crying. And that was the first moment that told me, Edwin, you got to stand up. And here today, as I speak to you, Olive, I have seen over thousands of young people.
Okay. I'll cut you short.
Yes.
We have Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka remembering Robert Collymore.
I watched Jeff's comments yesterday along with Mheshimiwa Peter Kenneth and the other executives. Obviously, without doubt, the most successful CEO, not just in our country, but in our region. I have known the late Bob Collymore at a personal level. We have traveled this country together. We have even tried to assist the less fortunate together.
We have Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka who's speaking outside the All Saints Cathedral. We also have Musalia Mudavadi, who arrived a few minutes before him. We also expect shortly the Deputy President William Ruto, as well as President Uhuru Kenyatta, who will be addressing those congregated in celebration and in honor of Robert Collymore's legacy. We've heard from all these people who speak about the impact that he had on society, who've spoken about the impact he even had on business, and that for him it was not just about business, but about bringing change. And I think Lois called it the survivor's mission.
Yes.
Finding your survivor's mission. Has Bob Collymore inspired you to live a more full and fulfilling life. We've heard about him being a lover of jazz and being a supporter of the arts. And of course, all of that, I'm sure, will come up in the tributes that will be given at the All Saints Cathedral. We expect several speakers. We expect to hear a poem from Michael Joseph, who is going to be the interim, or rather is the interim CEO. He was the founding CEO, but has taken up the mantle in a transitional capacity following Bob's demise. Robert Collymore passed away early on Monday morning. He was at home. We've seen Jeff Koinange, who will be emceeing the event. He's spoken severally about how Bob was prepared and readied his family and his loved ones for his eventual demise. He was dealing, or rather he was battling leukemia. And in 2017, between October 2017 it was October 2017, he came back in July 2018. For 9 months, he was receiving treatment in the United Kingdom. And we also had his term extended in April, but unfortunately his health took a turn for the worst. Robert Collymore, of course, leaves behind a widow, and that is one boy, Collymore, and he leaves behind 4 children, his mother, sister, a nephew, and a niece. And as we can see, people were expected to have been seated by 10:30 a.m. Those unable to access the All Saints Cathedral will be able to follow the proceedings within the cathedral from Uhuru Park grounds, where whatever will be taking place within the cathedral will be streamed live. I can see Giuliani before him. I saw several other people walk in and take their places. There is Deputy President William Ruto. Now let's go back outside the cathedral. Betty Maina has a few words in memory of Bob Collymore.
Not just in the world, especially here in Kenya, and a core part of our Africa team.
Thank you very much. Have a good morning. Olive, we've been speaking to Betty Maina, who's in government. But speaking of government, the Deputy President, the second in command, Deputy President William Ruto, is in the church already. He was here earlier. He went to a white tent behind the church where the family and the widow of the late Bob Collymore was there. They had a few words. She came outside and was briefed by the clergy of this particular church, and they walked into the building. So probably proceedings could be any time from now. We are still waiting to see if the head of state will be able to join the congregation this morning. It was a bit sunny earlier. The skies have dimmed a bit, probably in a somber mood, but still the family says Kenyans should celebrate this life by wearing color, because he was full of color and he brought a lot of joy to those whom he touched. We are still here, Oliver, an entire team from the NTV crew. As soon as things begin to roll, we shall be able to cover that live. But at the moment, we are just still looking for who has come in. We are seeing a delegation coming from the distance. Looking at that, it could be anything from expatriates or the diplomatic community that has come to join Kenyans. The former British Premier Tony Blair is here in Kenya. I'm sorry for the excitement, Oliver, bit. It's a bit surreal to see him in the flesh, but he is walking into the All Saints Cathedral to be able to join Kenyans in mourning for this particular day. He will not be able to take questions from the press, but he has just entered the building, and probably the last person we expect to come here would be President Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember, this was a man who not only touched those whom he dealt with in the high echelons of corporate life, but he went to the lower cadres of community. We've seen artist Giuliani, who's been able to cover many artistic scenes in the slum areas. This was one of the places where the late Bob Collymore visited. We have seen them together eating out at an eatery, what we commonly refer to as Mama Ntilie, probably eating chapati madondo, which could be chapatis and beans. And that is how humiliating opportunity brought him down to the people and to engage with them and then just see how the other side of Kenya lives, other than the affluent buildings where many in the corporate world would stay. We are keeping an eye on the main entrance of the church. Once you see the clergy prepare themselves, it could be an indication that probably the ceremony is about to begin, but then again, we are just waiting, like I said before, for the head of state to come here. But we know that his second in command is in the church. He went to condole with the widow for a few words of just encouragement to let her know that it is well and the country is behind her in her time of mourning. A few cars coming in still from the main gate, so probably we will just keep an eye on what is going on here. Olive, I don't know if you have any questions for us at the moment, because we've been talking to anyone and everyone whose life was touched by Bob Collymore, and all they could tell us was that he was a humble man, he loved people, and he loved to enjoy himself, and he told them just to enjoy life other than just being too stringent and look at one aspect of life or the other.
All right, Leila, the Deputy President has arrived, and he was followed by Tony Blair, and he got a wow from Leila Mohammed. So we expect President Uhuru Kenyatta to be arriving at the All Saints Cathedral shortly. The presiding minister is the provost, the Right Reverend Canon Sami Wainaina, and he will be assisted by Reverend Philip Owuor. Jeff Koinange will be the MC. The cathedral opened at 9 a.m. The guests were required to have been seated by 10:30 a.m. and we expect that the proceedings within the cathedral will start any time now. After that, once the service starts, it will start with a jazz processional and the song Smile by Nat King Cole. There will be a prayer led by the provost, the Right Reverend Canon Sami Wainaina. Joshua Oigara, who was one of his quote-unquote boys and the CEO of the Kenya Commercial Bank, will speak to Bob's journey. Of course, he was born in Guyana and went to school in Britain, and thereafter served in various capacities in the telco sector, and before coming to Kenya taking up the job of CEO at Safaricom from Michael Joseph in November of 2010. He did take a medical leave for the duration of 9 months to receive treatment for the leukemia that he was battling. I see the Deputy President is now outside the All Saints Cathedral, so we expect President Uhuru Kenyatta to be right around the corner. We'll also hear from President Uhuru Kenyatta at about 1:25 p.m., given he's arrived right on time. Other tributes will be from a student of the M-Pesa Foundation Academy, Charles Musandu, who is a Safaricom staff member. We'll also hear from the CEO of the Vodafone Group, from the chairlady of the Safaricom Dealers Association, and that is Esther Moshemi. Joshua Chepkoni will also be giving a tribute. He is the telecommunications community representative. On your screen, we can see the Safaricom Youth Orchestra and Ghetto Classics have been providing entertainment. So now we can see that the president's escort has arrived at the All Saints Cathedral, and we should see the president getting out of his vehicle any second now. President Uhuru Kenyatta has arrived at the All Saints Cathedral. He will be joining Tony Blair, who is a former premier for the United Kingdom. There he goes, exiting his vehicle.
Well, Olive, the head of state, and Her Excellency, the First Lady, Margaret Kenyatta, have just arrived here. They are walking into the All Saints Cathedral, and that would be an indication that the ceremony will begin any time from now. The second in command was out here to receive His Excellency and his wife, who have come here as not only the head of state, but also as friends of the Collymore family to mourn a brother, a father, a son, a husband, someone who was loved by many. This would be the end of the life journey here on earth as he looks into his creator. He was interred his remains were interred at the Kariakor Hindu crematorium earlier this week, but this particular ceremony is just to celebrate his life. This is according to how he had willed things to happen. He wanted things to happen as fast as possible, and very soon this could be the beginning of the ceremony. So maybe if I can just step away from the pictures for you to hear what is going on before the ceremony continues.
We welcome all of you to the All Saints Cathedral. We ask you that we stand for the opening prayer. In the name of God, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are the source of life. And we thank you for the gift of Bob that you gave to the parents, that you gave to the siblings, that you gave to the nation of Guyana, to the UK, and thank you for his gift to this nation. Today we meet here to celebrate his life. We pray that you may remind each one of us that we are a gift that has been given, not to edify ourselves, but to edify people that we live with. And we pray today that you help us to understand that each one of us is a gift, so that we can offer ourselves to many people and make a difference in the life of those whom we live about. So we ask now for the power of the Holy Spirit to come and comfort each one of us and comfort this nation, that each one of us will be comforted but also challenged to live a life of ethics and integrity. So we thank you and we praise you, for this is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
The grass withers and the flowers fall, because the breath of the Lord blows on them. Surely the people are grass. Blessed are they that mourn, for they will be comforted. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. The saying is sure: if we have died with him, we shall also live with him. If we endure, we shall also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death. That is the devil.
To him who overcomes, I will give the right to sit on the throne, just as I overcame and sat with my Father on his throne. Tell the next generation that this is God, our God, forever and ever. He himself will guide us to death. And be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. The grass withers and the flowers fall, because the breath of the Lord blows on them. Surely the people are grass.
I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to the All Saints Cathedral. Your Excellency the President and Mama, welcome. Your Excellency the Deputy President, please feel welcomed. Your Excellencies, the family of Bob Collymore, friends and colleagues, good morning. Now, Bob, the way I understood yesterday, would have wanted us to have a beautiful service to celebrate his life. And it was not just about him, it was about what he stood for and what he believed. He loved keeping time, and he wanted us to do things the right way. So kindly, let's make this service truly a joyous service as we follow this program that has been prepared for us. I now want to invite all of you to remain standing as we sing the hymn, When Peace Like a River. We have gathered here this morning to celebrate the life of our departed brother, Bob Collymore, whom the Lord has called to himself. Yet we believe that since Jesus Christ died and rose again, so it will be for those who die in Christ, for God will bring them to life with Jesus. Heavenly Father, in your Son Jesus Christ, you have given us a true faith and a sure hope. We pray this morning that you may strengthen this faith and this hope in us in all the days of our lives, that we may live as those who believe in the communion of saints and the forgiveness of sins and the resurrection to eternal life. Amen. Remain standing.
For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. Please remain standing for the reading of the psalm.
The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pasture. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness, love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Kindly take your seats. I now want to welcome three people. We'll stand with Mr. Joshua Oigara, the CEO of KCB, to read Bob's journey. Then he'll be followed by Mr. Michael Joseph, reading a poem and a tribute. Then after that, I will welcome my co-MC. In church, we don't MC services. But because of the friendship between Jeff and Bob, I allowed him to do this. You will allow him to make any mistake, he's allowed, because he's used to the bench. And now this is a church. I'll see how he'll perform. And so kindly, Joshua, Michael, follow each other, then we welcome Jeff.
And I will read the journey for Bob Collymore. I will paraphrase it. It is in the booklets on the page number 3 and number 4. Bob Collymore was brought up in Babris in Guyana. We call him as Bob. A lively and charming young boy. He often ran circles around his grandmother, who looked after him in his early years once his mother left to go to the United Kingdom to pursue work opportunities. Growing up amongst the fragrant flora of Guyana, Bob's deepest and earliest memory was a strict discipline his grandmother instilled in him. He watched as she invited other children, to share the food at home, often questioning why other children were eating family's food. Her answer and indeed her philosophy became his deepest and earliest memory was a strict discipline his grandmother instilled in him. He watched as she invited other children, to share the food at home, often questioning why other children, to always ensure that everyone had a seat at the table, even if that means having half portions, so that there is enough for everyone. When the time came to join his mother in the United Kingdom, Bob left at the prospect of moving to a new country to explore the breadth of a new experience. He was initially unprepared for the reality of being one of the only black boys in his school, but quickly discovered that his quick wit, innate sense of mischief, and cheery humor gave him an edge. And someone who viewed the world through an inventive lens, Bob quickly discovered art as an outlet, and for most of his teenage years, he imagined an idyllic future where he could live off the creations. And when time came for university, he suffered his first significant setback. He was offered a place at the Warwick University, but had to turn it down because he was not eligible for funding. It was in that moment that he learned that he had to adapt if he wanted to create more opportunities for himself. While initially he thought this setback would mean that he could fully imagine a future of traveling and being an artist, that dream ended abruptly when his mother gave him an ultimatum at the age of 18. Get a job or find a new home. Not taking any chances, she secured an interview for him and made sure he showed up. And there begins Bob's accidental journey into the world of telecoms. He set up his first job as British Telecom, or BT as we know. And his first job was a tedious one, stacking shelves, but he did it so well that he had no choice. So BT had no choice but to shelve his efforts and give him a new job. Bob went on to join Cellnet and later Dixon, and he was responsible for many opportunities to grow and build a network. But in '98, Bob joined Vodafone, where he worked in progressively senior roles to enhance the company's strategic direction and build new solutions around the mobile phones. Bob then went on to his first global posting in Japan, and later on to South Africa as the Vodafone Governance Director for Africa, and later as the Chief of Corporate Affairs, which exposed him on how technology could transform the lives and leave an impact. But perhaps it was Bob's work in Kenya that catalyzed his belief that purpose was a key driver for business. And without a sustainable vision, companies will not be able to attract the right people and make any profits. And these 3 Ps form the essential elements for any company, and were quickly adopted by Safaricom. In later years, Bob was acutely aware that he had started a race of life within set limits that he had no controls over. He spent the later years of his life trying to make sure other people never had the experience with the same limitations. By leveraging the power of partnerships, Bob motivated his peers to make a more active stand on building partnerships, building responsible businesses, and sustaining a global outlook and transform lives. And Bob really understood the business community was a key catalyst to fast-track inclusion, and the global goals, as we know them as Sustainable Development Goals, are the most effective lens that could enable businesses to see inequalities and business opportunities. Bob held significant global roles, both at the United Nations level, as an ambassador, as a leadership advisor, as a commissioner, and he was a member locally at the Vision 2030, a founding trustee of the National Road Safety Trust,
He was a founder of the Kenya for Kenyans, and he was spearheading initiatives through the Diabetic Management Institute. He was decorated by His Excellency the President as a Moran of the Burning Spear for his efforts to support Kenyan society. And all through his career, Bob's affinity for the arts and music never left him. During his time in Safaricom, he founded the perfect medium, allowing him to explore how to create more opportunities. And he founded the Safaricom International Jazz in 2014 and would cherish the opportunity to host award-winning international acts alongside Kenyan jazz musicians to support the children of Ghetto Classics. And Ghetto Classic is a community-based program that aims to transform the lives of 4,000 children by using music, education, to provide opportunities for themselves. So his unique outlook on life created the necessary ingredients for an extraordinary individual. And to the end, Bob was extraordinary. Bob passed away early Monday this week at his home in Nairobi from acute myeloid leukemia. Bob is survived by his extended family in Guyana, the United Kingdom, and here in Kenya. He leaves behind his wife, Wamboi, 4 children, his mother, his sister, a niece, and a nephew. Fare thee well, my friend. Go well, Bob. Thank you.
About 1 year ago, Bob showed me this poem that he'd found in a book, and we agreed that whoever survived the other would read this poem at his funeral. I'm genuinely sad and heartbroken to be the one reading this poem today. It's called My Funeral. Forgive me for the words. I hope I can trust you, friends, not to use our relationship as an excuse for an unsolicited ego trip. I have seen enough of them at funerals, and they make me cross. At this one, though deceased, I am to be the boss. If you're asked to talk about me for 5 minutes, please do not go on for 8. There is a strict timetable at the crematorium, and nobody wants to be late. If invited to read a poem, just read the bloody poem. If requested to sing a song, just sing it as suggested, and don't say anything. Though I will not be there, glancing pointedly at my watch and fixing the speaker with a malevolent stare, remember that this is how I always reacted when I felt that somebody's speech, sermon, or poetry reading was becoming too protracted. Yes, I was impatient and intolerant and not always polite. And if there aren't many people at my funeral, it will serve me right. I'm sure that's not what happened. As always, between Bob and I will ignore his instructions of just read the bloody poem and say a few more words. He will probably be upset, but he would do the same to me. Much has already been said about Bob, and much more will be said here today. I have, even with his encouragement, started writing my book about my life and Safaricom, and have so far written only one chapter. I called it Chapter 33. And I called it Bob. One day you may read it. But what I would like to say here today in the presence of all of you is that Bob was the bravest man I ever met. He faced the indignities of months of injections, blood transfusions, chemotherapy, constant tests and examinations, pain, and in the end death, with an enormous sense of humor and resilience. I'm sure many of you knew that about him. He was so considerate and concerned about his family, his team, and even his doctors. He did not want anyone to worry about him. He wanted to worry about everybody else. Over the last 15 years, I went from being amused by this white man in a black body, pretending to be a very serious corporate person, to really becoming a serious corporate leader, to the only man whom I loved. And desperately wanted to live forever. Excuse me. But somehow God had other plans. Farewell, my friend, and God rest your soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Joseph. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight to the tributes. We're going to begin with Ashley Chepkorir. She's a student at the M-Pesa Foundation Academy. She will be followed by Charles Musandu, representing Safaricom staff, and thereafter Nick Reed, the CEO of the Vodafone Group. Ashley.
All members of the Collymore family, Your Excellency the President, all protocols observed, good morning. My name is Ashley Chepkorir, a Form 4 student at M-Pesa Foundation Academy, and I stand here this morning representing the students and staff of the Academy, a project that was very dear to Bob's heart. I first met Bob in the streets of Nairobi outside the Kenya Conservatoire of Music in 2016. He was heading to his car, and I walked up to him and said, "Hey sir, my name is Ashley Chepkorir from M-Pesa Foundation Academy. Could you please come to the Academy on Monday because there will be a function to welcome the students in the campus, and I will be the MC." Surprisingly, he didn't think twice. He enthusiastically said yes. I longed to meet him after the function because I had a lot of questions to ask him. I walked up to him and asked if he lives in a cave or something, because I could not find him on any social media platform. He gave me his contacts, and this is how we started our father-daughter relationship. In one of our first conversations, he said, "The joy of knowing children like you and all the wonderful children at the Academy is immeasurable." On 18th June 2017, during Father's Day, I wrote to him and told him that when my friends were talking about their dads, the first person that came to my mind was him. In his reply, he said that that was the most heartfelt message he has ever received. He said we share the same father experience, and just like me, he refused to let the past define his future, and that he had chosen to live a richly fulfilling life. I noted something impressive in him. He didn't just love and care for the fraternity at the Academy for his public image. He was genuine, generous, and humorous too. I remember we once organized a surprise visit during the sports day. He had a busy schedule and specifically said the visit would be very brief. The very and brief was in capital letters. He actually ended up staying for hours. All his emails ended with, "We now all need to focus on improving those grades as you promised." He wanted us to be successful, and on behalf of the students, his wish will be fulfilled. He has taught us a lot, and though he persistently told us that we inspired him, he inspired us more, and he will still inspire us every single morning. Through him, I learned a lot. He told me that a good business person uses their own product. That's when I started wearing my own jewelry and accessories and not just selling it to others at the Academy. The M-Pesa Foundation Academy fraternity was saddened by the news, and there was a somber mood in the campus. We lit candles in the resource center and administration block to honor the good life that Bob lived. He was our mentor and greatly impacted our lives, especially the students. We'll miss his surprise visits and inspiring speeches. I know that completely filling the empty space in our hearts is almost impossible, but we will try by being transformational leaders. He accepted that death is inevitable and still chose to be happy. This teaches me that every moment in life counts and that we should always maximize the present, because We don't know what tomorrow holds. My last message to him is that you may not be here anymore, but my love for you will never die. I miss you, Dad. Your legacy lives on, and may your soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, Your Excellencies, admired business leaders, friends and colleagues, Mrs. Bob Collymore and family, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Charles Musandu, a member of staff at Safaricom. I'm here today to celebrate the life of our CEO, Bob Collymore. It is not easy, but we have chosen to focus not on the loss, but on what we gained from interacting with him and knowing him. Bob was many things to many people. To me and countless others within Safaricom and beyond, he was a champion for equality, diversity, and inclusion. His commitment to using everything within his power to do good was not just something he spoke about. He championed it. And I, along with 129 other members of Safaricom staff living with disabilities, are a testament to this. We had the opportunity to interact with Bob a number of times, including a year ago during the Global Disability Summit in London, when he joined the Safaricom team and participated in a roundtable discussion on disability inclusion. During this session, he spoke with passion about the need for more organizations to embrace persons with disability. It wasn't just something he said because it supported the business public stance on embracing the Sustainable Development Goals, which he was also very passionate about. It was something he truly believed in, that myself and many others like me deserved a seat at the table. It might seem like a small commitment to make, creating an inclusive environment where every single one of us can thrive. But to the community of persons with disability, it makes a world of difference by empowering us, restoring our dignity, and showing the world that we too have something meaningful to offer. I like to think that this was part of Bob's magic, the secret to his success, a combination of little actions that snowballed into something great, and that something great became Safaricom as we know it today. For 9 years, we enjoyed his visionary leadership, his enthusiasm for life, and his commitment to transforming Safaricom into a purpose-led business. Bob was not just a boss. He was a friend, a mentor, a man who didn't take himself too seriously. He inspired us to stand for what we believed in, to find meaning in what we did, and to pursue a life of purpose. It was exactly what he did, and we are all better for it. Calling Bob a good man would be grossly underselling who he was, because Bob was not only a good man, he was a legend. He may no longer be with us physically, but he isn't really gone, because legends never die. Legends never die. They remain alive in us, and we see the fruits of their work all around us. So, Bob, if you can hear me, as you transition to your new home, we remain eternally grateful for the time we got to spend together, for the wisdom you shared with us, and the leadership you provided. Your vision lives on in every single one of us. To his family, we pray that God will grant you strength, peace, and comfort during this very difficult period. And until we meet again, fare thee well, Bob. Thank you.
Dear friends, family, President, good morning. My name is Nick Reed. I'm the CEO of Vodafone Group. Bob was an inspiration throughout his global career with our group, which spanned 20 years and covered the UK, Japan, South Africa, and of course, beautiful Kenya. I personally had the privilege of working closely with Bob in his CEO role, especially whilst a member of the Safaricom board. Taking on the CEO role of Safaricom was a big step for Bob. He had not been a CEO before. Michael was never going to be an easy act to follow in many ways, but especially given he had built a great company admired around the world for its contribution in changing lives for the better. The bar had been set high. Success was not obvious. The fear of failure would have compromised many leaders. However, what I then saw under Bob's leadership over the next 9 years can only be described as remarkable. He gradually developed his own vision for Safaricom, a vision that moved from a highly successful telecoms company to a purpose-led digital platform powering the Kenyan economy and improving the lives of everyone in society. Bob did something remarkable, something very few leaders have done around the world. He redefined a great company to make it truly exceptional. He was able to do this because he was an exceptional human being. There's been so many things written about Bob and his leadership, but personally, I saw a man that was guided by a strong moral compass of what's right and a real desire to make a positive difference to society. That was warm, open, caring for those around him. That was humble, always seeking advice, keen to learn, reflective. He just wanted to be a better person and leader to accomplish his purpose in life. Ultimately, all delivered with a wonderful, wicked sense of humour and that lottery-winning smile. He was a person you wanted to spend time with, that you would be richer for the experience, that you looked fondly back at those moments you spent together. Even in adversity, whether business or undergoing treatment, he did not waver, always staying true to himself. An inspirational leader with a clear northern star. This was the Bob we all loved. This week, we lost a very special person, but Bob and his legacy will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, Bob.
Next up, will be Esther Mushemi. She's the chair lady of the Safaricom Dealers Association. And she will be followed by Joshua Chepkwony. He will be representing the telecoms community.
Your Excellency, the President Uhuru Kenyatta, Her Excellency, the First Lady Margaret Kenyatta, Your Excellency, the Deputy President William Ruto, Mrs. Bob Collymore, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, good morning. This is my tribute to Bob. Bob, you truly were a great man, a man of values, a man full of love for humanity. These are just some of the qualities that made you an exceptional CEO who led Safaricom for the last 9 years. I remember when you joined Safaricom and we were worried as to whether you'd fit in the shoes of Michael Joseph. This was made worse because you came in at a time of great turbulence in the industry. The first half-year results that you announced reported a loss. Losses were unheard of at Safaricom. Personally, I was devastated. But thereafter, you made tough decisions that turned the company around, and since then, you registered growth year on year. You indeed created your own shoes. Bob, you are totally against corruption. I remember that day I was in your office and we were having a conversation along this topic, and you told me, Esther, I have a wife, I have a mother and children. I cannot afford to live an unethical life. What will I tell them? This confirmed to me that your fight against corruption was personal. You taught me to ask the same question. I pray many of us today would make the same decision to live a corruption-free life. Many times, I came to your office seeking for a solution for the dealers. You called us your dealers. You truly cared for us. We felt that as long as you are at the helm of Safaricom, the business was secure. I'm sure the stakeholders of transforming lives, creating employment, and I'm sure the taxman celebrates Safaricom too. Let us remember this as we search for your successor, for a big brother cannot afford to trample on everyone else. I've also learned from you on how to become a consultative leader. You valued consulting your team before you gave a solution, and I came to respect this style of management. No wonder you have left behind a great team and partnerships. You truly believed that when people come together, great things happen. Oftentimes, in the dealers platform, you referred to me as your sister. This was very humbling. It proved that you treasured and valued genuine friendship, something you acknowledge was very difficult to get at your level. This morning, as I was going through the messages that we shared with Bob over time, I came across one message that he sent for me in October 2017. That is when I had done an interview for the Business Daily. And he told me, "Great interview today. It was humble, honest, and authentic." And I asked myself, in October, probably, when you wrote that message, you were in pains. What made you send me that message? And I could only conclude it is because you represented people who are humble, people who are honest, and people who are authentic. I can testify before this crowd that if there is anything that Bob hated, is people who are proud. Now that you cared this much, Bob, I'm sure you are surrounded by great friends in heaven. When I asked you to do the foreword for my book, you did not hesitate to say yes. After the book was published, I came to your office and gave a copy for yourself and for your wife, Wambui. I was feeling so small, and I remember telling you, I do not know even why I wrote this book. Honestly, I could not justify it to myself. You told me, "Shut up, Esther. The fact that you have run a successful business, one with a journey against a background of values and principle, is all that matters." This really encouraged me, and I'll be forever grateful. On behalf of the Dealers Association, thank you for always making time for us, challenging us to be better business leaders and people. Thank you for your dedication and inspiring us to greatness. It is said, what you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. Until we meet again, rest well, Bob, rest well.
Is it afternoon or morning? This is a tribute on behalf of the telecom industry, where Bob has been our captain for quite a number of years. Mrs. Wambui Collymore, the family of late Collymore, the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, Her Excellency Margaret Kenyatta, the First Lady of our Republic of Kenya, His Excellency the Deputy President, Dr. William Samoei Arap Ruto, the directors of Safaricom, the staff of Safaricom PLC, ladies and gentlemen. I met Bob Collymore a decade or so ago through Michael Joseph, then the CEO of Safaricom, who I can see him here. And he introduced me to Bob before he took over the position of CEO. And Bob has served in Teams as a board chairman, as well I serve as his vice chairman for the last 9 years. He was active in Teams board from December 2010 until the day he passed away on the 1st of July 2019. He was very effective steering the board, harmoniously and skillful navigating through every key subject matter with full consensus, as other speakers have talked about, that he ran his management style through a consensus, never hurried any decision. Everyone at Teams board will always enjoy his meeting and leadership style. It showed his leadership when we had a major fiber cut off the coast of Mombasa in ensuring that Teams Consortium and our international partners, Etisalat, restored the service. Bob Collymore was a true selfless leader who poured all out of his dedication and energy to the last minute to the society and the nation as a whole. He believed in transforming the lives of Kenyans in more ways than one. For example, during the crisis of starvation in the northern Kenya, he called few of us, and friends, I believe some of our colleagues are here, and particularly in partnership with the Media Association of Kenya. And he said, what can we do? Let's not only speculate and say, we are seeing in the news that guys are starving in northern Kenya. What action can we do ourselves? And he managed, through that leadership, we were able to form a team. We mobilized through including a basculate of Red Cross and the rest of it. And we were able to craft a message that resonated to all walks of life in Kenya, to be able to contribute as little as much, whether it's 10 shillings through M-Pesa. And I think we raised, our initial target was around 500 million, but we ended up, I think we reached cash was almost 700 million. With some barter trade and so forth, it went to almost $1 billion. I think it is a record which has been kept, but it's through the leadership of Bob Collymore. And we need to remember that that was his leadership and the love of the country. Because he came to this country, he discovers this country, he fell in love with this country, and he behaved and he believed truly he became a real Kenyan. Another initiative which he did also was the issue of the road carnage, an accident, and he said, what can we do? He mobilized a few of us, and he said, we must take an action, we must contribute something, we must participate. We cannot only wait for the political leadership, but let us also have our contribution. Because this man, he always made himself very useful to the society. I think that was a cornerstone, an attribute that you believe you need to ask yourself, how useful are you to the society as yourself? What do you do to make a difference? Is it complaining or doing something? But Bob, through his initiative and leadership, I think he formed a road safety advisory, and in the process, funds were raised, and more speed guns were bought for the police so that they can improve the process of trying to improve our road safety in the country. Because losing life, we're losing GDP, we're losing the best of our country in terms of our people. He also, which is a very important milestone, because he joined in the company in 2010, towards the tail end of the year. We were also going towards an election, and remember that we had serious issues in 2007, 2008. And Bob took an initiative and said, let's call the guys of the media. He called us for dinner. He said, guys, what are we going to do to make sure that we have a very peaceful election in this country? And we talked at it and said, how can a guy come from outside and leads us from here? But I realized that this guy had good meaning for this country. He meant well for the country. And we took that initiative, and I'm sure all of us, we had a very peaceful election in 2013. But I know it was not on the surface, but some people worked hard. We used to have a secretary in Nzioka. Thank you. You worked very hard in those night meetings, drafting, Patrick Wako, writing, making sure that we have one message across the country in terms of what we communicate with the citizen and encourage every citizen. And of course, Bob was a businessman. I can't forget the question of he brought in jazz music. I'm sure it has been described by other people, but I think he kept on, some of us who are not jazz fanatics, and we know Karumba and others, we decided to go and listen to the jazz music and saxophone and so forth. He made life of us, and we got to enjoy, and we start now thinking and say, we're upgrading ourselves. In the process, we upgrade ourselves. But what distinguishes Bob Collymore from all of us is that he had something which is being called by business gurus John Collins, a level 5 leadership, humility. He has that aspect of humility, and he's a man of handshake. As much as he competes in the world, he used to sit with a competitor, have a cup of coffee, and be able to discuss real issues. He was non-controversial and he had a different way of assimilating to the society. Of course, Bob Collymore was a businessman embedding Safaricom as an unrelenting, ferocious competitor and make no apologies for its success. He was, however, quick, also able to leverage synergies with competitors such as Airtel Kenya, Telecom Kenya, Jamii Telecom, and other licensed telecoms operators well represented here. And I've seen Mugo Kibati here, and driven by the ultimate goal of delivering value to end users. We at Teams and the industry will surely miss him. May God rest his soul in eternal peace. Farewell, my friend. To the family, we commit you to the hands of the Almighty God, who holds you tomorrow in his hands. He shall comfort you and strengthen you, for he has a bright future for you despite the loss of your beloved. God bless you all.
That is the Safaricom Youth Orchestra and Ghetto Classics there. Makofi kwao tafadhali. We're going to continue with our tributes. First up, retired Captain Kongo Muigai. He'll speak on behalf of the entire Collymore family. He'll be followed by Patrick Kwaku, and he'll be representing the business community. And right after that, British High Commissioner to Kenya, Nick Haley, representing the Diplomatic Corps. Speaking of British, I'd like to recognize former British Prime Minister Tony Blair in the house. Sir, welcome.